The Iditarod Sled Dog Race Experience.
My name is Kim, but you don't care about that. You want to know about Mitch. Mitch is an Alaskan Husky. An Alaskan Husky is a mixed breed. That mixed breed has Greyhound in them to give them great speed when they're running, some Siberian Husky to give them a good coat, and then short-haired Pointer to give them good feet. I'm not going to tell you that that's the only breed of dog that's bred in there. Some people have tried German Shepherd, Border Collie, and others, but that's the three breeds that tend to work the best for the Alaskan Husky. So he does not look like a Siberian Husky. We call them Slowberians in the sled dog world, so he definitely is a mixed breed. So I own and operate Husky Haven Kennels. It is up in the Grand Marais, Michigan area in the UP. We have a Shingleton mailing address, but we give sled dog rides out of there, and we are also a racing kennel. I was the first New Jersey team to ever qualify, enter, and run Iditarod in 2009. Please do not hold against me that I'm a New Jerseyite, but now if it makes you feel better, I'm from Michigan now, so that's okay. So how many people have heard of Iditarod? Let's do a show of hands. Yeah, okay. So it always starts in Anchorage, always ends in Nome. Do we know why we do Iditarod? Anybody? The serum run. So in 1925, kids were dying of diphtheria in Nome, Alaska. In 1925, airplanes couldn't fly. They were open cockpit. It just did not work. So they needed a way to get the medicine out to Nome, Alaska and save all the kids. So how do we do that? Well, if we can't fly an airplane out there and we can't use a ship, then what are we going to do? We're going to relay a dog sled team. Some neat facts about it is it took 20 mushers. It took 127 hours and 674 miles. So a crazy man named Joe Reddington Sr. back in 1973 said, let's recreate this. Let's just do it once. And the wives said, are you nuts? There's nothing out there but moose and bear. We don't want you to go do that. And they said, oh no, we're going to go do that. It took them 31 days to complete that race in 1973. Today's record, a little over 8 days. So people say, wow, 31 days compared to 8 days, what's the difference? Well, there's a lot of differences. One is the breed of dog that we talked about. That Greyhound certainly makes them go a lot quicker. We actually know how to do distance mushing now. We give them equal run rest typically. We run them 6 hours, we rest them 6 hours. We run them 6, we rest them 6. They'll go forever. They just need quite a bit of rest with that run. Also, we got better sleds. We don't have the old rickety wooden sleds anymore. We have the aluminum ones, the titanium ones. They're a lot lighter. The vet care is absolutely wonderful on Iditarod. The vets are at every checkpoint. They're checking the dogs, making sure that they're healthy, and we know if they're healthy, and then we can leave that dog at a checkpoint and go on with one less dog. So that's why we do it, is the Great Serum Run of 1925. They were pretty much mutts or a lot of Siberian, Slowberian Huskies. And Sepla and Togo, of course, you've heard of, and Kaysen and Balto made the 1925 Serum Run. So the dogs looked a little different. My home is now in Shingleton, Michigan. So this is a log cabin. We have the dogs strategically around the cabin. So if they're barking at 2 o'clock in the morning, we go out and check on them at 2 o'clock in the morning. So we're with them 24 hours a day. We do have 49 Huskies in our possession right now. So you might as well say round numbers, 50 dogs. There's 2 of us that take care of them. And it is a 24-hour-a-day job. We stay with them all the time. We might have a day that we can actually go in and do some grocery shopping. But other than that, it's not like we have a real job. This is our job. I do fly helicopters for a living also, but anyway, we're around them all the time and take care of them all the time. We had a inside-outside kennel in New Jersey. It was not heated in the wintertime. It was air conditioned in the summertime. Now that we moved up to Michigan, it's nice and cool in the UP. I left there today at 50 degrees and rain, and I got down here and it was 80 degrees. So anyway, we keep the dogs outside. They're on what we call swivels, and it's amazing how much happier they are outside. When I was in New Jersey, I thought we had the best kennel in the world. It was sitting there inside-outside kennels and air conditioning, and when we brought them up here and they can touch noses and run around in circles and play, they're a much happier dog. This is Sparkplug and Honda Bear. They were 2016 babies, so we have pens for the little kids, and they're a couple years old now and running our tours. One thing about an Alaskan Husky is they all look different. They all are different colors, different sizes, things like that. I prefer a female dog over a male dog. They listen better, just like the human race. They're better leaders, so I think Laura would agree with that with Maple, too. This is Emerald. She loves her ball. She has an egg that goes in her crate with her when we're out on the dog truck, and so she plays around just to let them be dogs also. People say, how do you train in the summertime? Well, we don't. If the temperature is below 50 degrees, we can go out and train. But if it's above 50 degrees, it hurts the dog, so we won't do that. So what we do in the fall is we hook them up to a four-wheeler or a quad, just like that, and they pull us around. And we might go a couple miles, anything 40 degrees or so, a couple miles, we'll put it in neutral, and we wear out the brakes quite a bit. We can wear out about 3 sets of brakes on the quad in a season. Anybody ever hear of Susan Butcher? Yeah, there was a t-shirt that was made up that said, Alaska, men are men and women win Iditarod. She unfortunately passed away in 2006. She was my mentor, she was my friend, and that's how I established my kennel. So I had a helicopter student, and he watched me kind of train dogs, and he actually bought me a dog named Prairie Dawn from her, and then we wound up being friends ever since. So this is Yogi and Boo, and if you look at the dates, yes, they're 10 years old. The problem is I do a lot of school presentations, and they all go, aw, so I keep it on there, but they were cute pups, that's for sure. They run tours with me, they've done some races. They went from being cute to even being cuter, and then they went to learning from their mom. I'll usually take a dog and put it with their mother or their father or an older experienced dog to train the dog. And I would love to say I'm a great dog trainer and I know exactly what I'm doing, but you know what? If I put them with an experienced dog, that experienced dog is going to train them far better than I will ever train them. So that's what we're doing there. Is Sapphire's running with Yogi in lead up in the top right-hand corner, and Bowie, the other one, down in the lower left-hand corner. More people have climbed Mount Everest than ever finished Iditarod. Over 2,000 people have actually climbed and summited Everest, and only about 600 people have actually finished Iditarod, so a huge difference. 16 dogs run your Iditarod team. They did just change that last year to 14 dogs, but you're taking care of all those dogs. You're pretty much only taking care of yourself on the mountain. So this is how I got started. Anybody know what kind of breed of dog that is? Yeah, exactly right. That's a Samoyed. If anybody has ever had a Samoyed, you'll know that their attention span is about of a 2-year-old. And let me tell you, so I hooked up those 3 on that cart, and I didn't have a clue what I was doing, okay? So I just kind of read in books and knew that I was supposed to say all right or hike and told them to go. We chased every squirrel on that trail. When we chased a squirrel, we went off the trail. When we went off the trail, we typically hit a tree. It wound up not being good. So my helicopter student saw me doing this and said, you're going to kill yourself, and I'm not going to get to learn how to fly helicopters, so this is a bad idea. So he called Susan Butcher, and Susan Butcher had Prairie Dawn. Prairie Dawn is the little husky in the right-hand picture there, and she was 3 years old. And it was Susan's daughter Tekla's main leader. So they sent her down to me. And after they sent her down to me, we didn't chase any more squirrels. We didn't hit any more trees. We did pretty good. And I went to visit Susan up in Alaska to Fairbanks. And I went to her house. And she didn't know I was coming. And on her refrigerator was that photo on the refrigerator. A 4-time Iditarod champion. And I said, what's my picture doing there? And she goes, She's like a little drill sergeant with those Samoyeds. So that's what she did. So we went from not knowing anything, chasing squirrels, hitting trees, to kind of knowing what we were doing, to 16 dogs on the Iditarod Trail going over ice. Took me 10 years to get there, financially especially, and training. 16 dogs is the length of a tractor trailer. It's about 54 feet. So when you're going around corners, you might not be able to see your leaders or anything else, so you got to trust those girls that are up front. So I am originally from New Jersey that we talked about. That is the New Jersey flag on the back of that dog truck. We were kind of proud to be in New Jerseyites when we were up there. And people looked at us, looked at that New Jersey flag and said, "New Jersey? You for real?" And we said, "Yeah." And they said, "Jamaican bobsled team?" And I said, "Well, I guess." Jamaican bobsled team came back as heroes. We came back as heroes, which was pretty cool. So we started giving some rides at Skytop. And if any of you have watched the movie Cool Runnings, that is Sanka in the top right picture, the one that always kissed the egg. And I took him for a ride at Skytop Lodge, and he's on the sled there, kind of with his hand over. And then he sent me a birthday picture of him and his team when they were actually filming the movie Cool Runnings. So it was pretty neat. So my mother was wonderful in all of this craziness that I had of wanting to run Iditarod. She took the cars out of the garage and said, "Here, you can have the garage and put all your stuff in there until you're ready," and load it up. So I loaded everything up in the dog truck and the trailer and went to Michigan. Went to Newberry, Michigan, trained at a camp there, and fell in love with Michigan, and that's why I live here now. But we loaded about 28 dogs up, a quad, a snowmobile, and about 40 bags of dog food. 40 days later, I was out of dog food. We go through about a bag a day. I am a horrible cook. I burn water. So I can run dogs, I can fly helicopters, I can do all that, but I cannot cook. So my mother was nice enough to do all the cooking for our drop bag. So when you're out on Iditarod Trail, they're not going to feed you, so you take your own food out there. So you make up your food ahead of time, freeze it, ship it up to Alaska, and then when you're out on the trail in your drop bags, and I'll show you pictures of those pretty soon, you pick up those drop bags, your food's in there, and then you can put it in your cooker and get something warm to eat while you're out there on the trail. That's a little off. We actually should redo that. It was a little closer to $50,000, but that gives you a general idea of how much it costs to run Iditarod. So many people have said, "When are you going to go back and run Iditarod again?" And it took me 10 years to get that money the first time, and we're about at 10 years now. But if you look at the dog booties alone, they're about $2 a piece. There's 2,000 of them that we typically run on Iditarod. That's $4,000 right there. So some of the expenses up there, it's just hard to cut that down. Maybe someday. We're about halfway there again. So one thing I loved about Michigan is we got snow and we counted it in the feet instead of the inches, and it was just wonderful. But we never got real cold temperatures up in the UP. We got all that lake effect snow, but it was never super cold. So I moved over to Togo, Minnesota, where it was 40 below zero for 3 weeks straight. And that was perfect. The dogs adjusted really well. I did not, just so you know. But they adjusted really well. So we stayed there and trained until we finally went up to Alaska. The meat that you see in the lower right-hand corner, they're 50-pound blocks of meat. We went through about 60 of those just for Iditarod. We cut them up into snack sizes, and then when we're out on the trail, we can throw them each a snack. The dogs will burn 12,000 calories a day out on the race. So you snack them usually about every hour. Whitefish, beaver, salmon, anything that's high in protein, high in water content is great for the dogs. We burn a lot of calories too. It's a great diet. If you want to lose weight, you just go out there and be cold and burn a lot of calories running behind that sled. So this is kind of the meat saw that we had. We would saw up the turkey in that picture, put it in a Ziploc baggie, 16 dogs. Run Iditarod, which we talked about, 16 little bits of meat in that baggie. Now, when you grab that baggie out of your sled, you got 16 pieces, no more, no less, and you can feed your dogs and off and on the way again. So we also decided to run the Yukon Quest, which is another 1,000-mile race. It runs from Fairbanks to Whitehorse, some depending on the year. Other years it's Whitehorse to Fairbanks. But we rented a place up in the Yukon Territory, up in Canada, and they said they had a meat saw, and they didn't. So this was my MacGyverism on trying to figure out how to cut the fat for the dogs. And I still have 10 fingers, by the way. And really what worked was putting the fat next to a heater and letting it melt down a little bit. So there are the drop bags that we talked about. There's 26 checkpoints on Iditarod Trail. So we'll send those drop bags out ahead of time. What's in them? Dog food, people food, booties, anything that you're going to need out on that trail is going to be in those baggies. We're allowed 3 per checkpoint. When we get to those checkpoints, we grab those baggies, restock our sled, and then we can go to the next checkpoint. How far is checkpoints apart? 19 miles is basically the shortest one, up to like 130 miles. So, but typically they're 50 to 60 miles apart. Stock up that sled, then you got enough to go again. I should mention that there's no checkpoint that's road accessible on the Iditarod Trail. So all those drop bags get flown out ahead of time. So we make them up. If you're from the lower 48, you ship them to Tacoma, Washington. They hop on a barge, they go up to Anchorage, and then they fly them via small airplane out all over the trail. And there's 64 bags per musher, and you usually have about 70 mushers. So they do a lot of flying. This is the Alcan Highway, connects, of course, the U.S. through Canada up to Alaska. We took 18 dogs up to Alaska to run Iditarod. And every 3 hours we would stop, get the dogs out, let them stretch out, water them, and put them back in their box. They love their boxes. They would be hopping up there wanting to get in there before we even wanted them in there. But just some beautiful country traveling up there. So this is bison or buffalo, whatever you want to call them. Now my mother went up with me, and my mother goes, and she said, "Stop the truck. I want to take pictures." So we stopped the truck, and then the bison started coming over to check out the dog truck, which you see in the lower left-hand corner. At that point, I said, this is time to leave, but we did get a couple good pictures of them. Moose in the middle. So one of the lodges going up the Alcan Highway, there's not much open. The only crazy folks that are on the Alcan Highway in the wintertime is dog mushers. Most of the time, it's just the summertime that everybody travels up there. Otherwise, this lodge was open. Sometimes there's 200 miles in between gas stations, so you take a little bit of a can and put it in the back of the truck just in case you hit bad weather, you ran out of gas, at least you have some extra. The vets are absolutely awesome on Iditarod. There's 2 days of vet checks. The first day that you go there, they take you into a trailer and they microchip the dogs. So they put a little chip in the back of their neck so they know that you have the same dogs. So basically what they're doing is making sure that we're not cheating. So I'm out there on the trail, and I know Mitch here gets tired after 600 miles. So I go to Katie, who's my best friend back there, and I say, take that snowmobile and meet me halfway in between the checkpoints of Iditarod and Shigeluk. Nobody's going to see us. I'm going to give you him. You're going to give me another white dog that kind of looks like him. Nobody will know the difference. Wrong. They swipe and they check the microchips at the checkpoints and make sure that we didn't cheat. The other thing they do is EKGs, make sure they have a healthy heart. They also take blood work, and they get that back to you the next day. If all your dogs pass that, then the next day they go to your truck and check and make sure your wrists are okay, your shoulders are okay, your pads are okay, everything's okay. So there's actually 2 days of vet checks to go out there and run Iditarod. So you can screen up to, it's either 21 or 24 dogs. We took 18 dogs, got them all screened, and all 18 passed. You're only allowed to use 16 on Iditarod. Which one are you going to leave behind, or which 2 are you going to leave behind? That was the hard part. I'm not saying it's right, but being the first New Jersey team to qualify, enter, and run Iditarod, you wind up being a little bit of a celebrity. So signing autographs, and that was the teacher on the trail, Herb Brambley. He actually wrote a book about our adventure. And just saying hi to everybody. Millennium Hotel was the Iditarod headquarters in 2009. If you look at that dog, his name was Seabiscuit, CB. He was named after a racehorse. And you can really see the hound in him. And that's a better picture of him. You can see his droopy ears, and you can really see the greyhound. Of course, the New Jersey flag, sleds on the top. You're allowed to send out a second sled. Usually everybody sends it after the Happy River Steps in the Dalzell Gorge, which is notorious for breaking sleds. That way, if you broke your sled, you have another one that you can use. Administering meds before the race, they want you to use Prilosec so nobody has any gastric ulcers. They want you to use vitamin E for a healthy heart and things like that. And that's what we're just doing with cotton. Big day before, training runs before the big day. If you take a look at Kennicott in the upper right-hand corner, all 4 feet's off the ground. She's just raring to go. She was my youngest dog on the team. She was a little over 2 years old. I do not like to really competitively race them until they're 2 years old or older. I think it's better for them. And she was my youngest, but she was just really wanting to go. So here in Michigan, we didn't have any tunnels to train in. New Jersey, we didn't have any tunnels to train in. So I came around a corner up in Alaska, and the dogs looked at that tunnel on the right-hand side and said, nope, I'm not going through there. Don't know what that is. So they crossed over to the left, decided that they were going to wipe out some of those orange fencing. And then I brought them back and I walked them through the tunnel and I gave them biscuits on the other end, told them that they were good dogs. And the next day we lined up in the upper right-hand corner and we went right on through that tunnel. Why is that important? There was a tunnel that we went through on the ceremonial start of Iditarod. And it was very nice to embarrass myself there with nobody watching than on the ceremonial start that everybody's taking pictures. So that worked out pretty good. This is booties, of course. Booties last for about 50 miles or so. So if you're traveling 10 miles an hour or so, every 5 hours you're changing out booties. They're made out of a Cordura 330. We were only out doing 20-mile training runs right before the race. So we could bring them back to the motel and hang them up and reuse them. They're $2 a piece. We want to reuse them and not have any more expense. So the person that was cleaning the motel room kind of got the idea that there was lots of dirty socks in there, let me tell you. It smelled pretty bad. So we have 16 dogs on the Iditarod Trail, 16 dogs, each having 4 feet, which have 4 booties. If you can do the math, it's 64 booties. 64 booties we're changing out every 5 hours or so for a 1,000-mile race. Booting and handing class is people that came up from New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania just to help me out. You're not allowed any outside assistance when you're out on the trail, but before that, to get you to the starting line, you can have as much help as you want, and that's exactly what they were doing. People say, how do you get your bib number? Well, they actually have a muckluck boot that you see on the upper right-hand corner. They stick their hand in there, pull out a number. Mine happened to be 52, so I was the 52nd musher to go out on Iditarod in 2009. So it always starts in Anchorage, always ends in Nome, 1,150 miles. And that's kind of a little bit of a lie at the present moment. It's supposed to start always in Anchorage and supposed to always end in Nome. There's been 3 years that they've had to move it to Fairbanks because of the lack of snow over the Alaskan range. So there has been a couple times that they moved it to Fairbanks. Other than that, there is a northern route and there's a southern route. The northern route is the first year that they ever did it in 1973. In 1976, they decided that they were going to make a southern route and it would be a little less stressful on all the little villages out there. So the northern route is done in the even years and the southern route is done in the odd years. I was qualified in 2008 to run Iditarod. I waited until 2009 because I wanted to go through Iditarod, the ghost town of Iditarod. 4th Avenue, when you guys get snow, the first thing you do is go out and shovel and plow. First thing that they do is truck in snow for Iditarod. So they truck it in, they put it on the city streets so you can see us going out of the starting chute in whatever year. So if you take a look, well, that was actually a veterinarian. He was from Massachusetts, and his name was Turner Lewis. He's now retired now, but he was the vet that took care of Cotton on the trail. That is the ceremonial start. You can see all the snow, and that is down right in 4th Avenue. That's my mom in the middle picture, and the crew that came up to help me. There's 2 starts on Iditarod. There's a ceremonial start, it's the dress rehearsal, and there's a real start. So the ceremonial start goes out of Anchorage, goes typically 11 miles, and you take an Iditarider with you. So if you want to be an Iditarider, you go on the computer, and you bid on whoever sled that you want to ride in. So you want to ride in my sled, you're going to bid money. He wants to ride in my sled, he bids against you. Whoever pays the most money is going to wind up going in the sled. I was the highest paid rookie in 2009 at $1,900. That's the Iditarod Trail start. The flags in the upper picture there is all the different countries that ran in 2009. You can see all of the buildings in the lower right-hand corner. You can see the stoplights and everything else, so they trucked all that snow in so they could follow us out. Charlotte was my Iditarider. She's the one that paid all that money. She's the one that's carrying the New Jersey flag there. She was about 73 years old at the time. We put a sleeping bag underneath her, and she rode down that 11 miles with me. She was great. Everybody's heard of Libby Riddle. She was the first woman to win Iditarod. She's in the top middle picture, just wishing me luck. Jean was one of my sponsors. She's also the one that takes care of the kennel with me so I can go out and do these shows up here in Michigan. So I told you that the female dogs are better leaders, and because it's just like the human race. But with that said, this is Burner, and Burner came from Susan Butcher, and he was an awesome leader. He was a very, very good leader. So he led with Cotton most of Iditarod. We call this 2-wheel drive. The dogs are really strong, and anybody that's tried to hold on to him today knows that they're very strong. And when they have all 4 feet on the ground, we call that 4-wheel drive, and we'll be off of our 2 feet. They're just that strong. So what we do is pick up on their front feet. We call it 2-wheel drive. That way we have more control of the dogs, and that way the dogs aren't getting hurt and we're not getting hurt. And that's a better picture. You can see the booties on their feet with Velcro around. You can see their front feet off the ground. 10 years in the making, there is the start, and that's the ceremonial start going through Anchorage. So this is part of the ceremonial start, and everybody's probably heard of Lance Mackey. He's won several times. He was out ahead of me, and we had a little bit of a traffic jam there, and all of us were backed up, and there was a moose out on the trail, and Lance was poking at the moose with a stick trying to get it off the trail. Finally, the moose left. I'm not so sure I would want to do that, but I'm not Lance. And he got the moose to leave, and then we all went back out on the trail again and finished our ceremonial start. So this is before the real start, and if you look at the middle picture, I'm not so sure that zipper wasn't going to break. I had everything in there. And of course, you have food for the dogs and spare food, emergency food for them, booties for all that time. Snacks, that first trek is 77 miles. We're going to snack every hour. That's 7 to 10 bags of snacks right there. So that sled weighed a good 250 pounds leaving the Iditarod start. That's Burner and Cotton, the 2 leaders for my Iditarod, the main leaders. There were a few other ones. And that's my mom putting on the bib. You wear your bib the first neck of the race and the last leg. That way everybody can know who you are by looking at your bib number. 10 years in the making, $50,000 poorer. There we go. And mushers run the race and volunteers make it happen. You know, we run a 24-hour race. We really do. We all have different run-rest schedule. We all travel at different speeds. So when we're out there, the volunteers have to be out there. There's veterinarians at every checkpoint. There's checkers that are checking you in. And if we didn't have all those volunteers, we couldn't run the race. So the volunteers are great. In the lower right-hand corner is 2 of my handlers. They were in the computer room, checking in different people, seeing where you're at, and posting it on the computer so you could see. The upper one is my mom. She was in the phone room. Schools would call and ask about questions that they would answer. Sandy and Jean had like a 2 a.m. shift. My mom had a good shift at about 9 o'clock in the morning. So a couple dogs had to stay behind because I took 18. Trumpet was one of them. So Sandy was bonding with Trumpet. He got taken in the Millennium Hotel and hidden in there and had some nice good snacks and things like that. If you're not computer literate, and I'm horrible with computers, you can walk up to this board in the Millennium Hotel and see where your favorite musher is. And this is snacking out on the trail. We talked about 16 snacks and giving them a piece of beaver or whatever. And that's exactly what we're doing, just stopping, snacking them, and then going out. If you take a look at the right-hand picture, weather's a little iffy. The ceiling's kind of low, and it looks like it's going to snow, and it does. That is my favorite picture. Jean blew that up, and I have that in my cabin in Michigan. That is myself and Rob Loveman. My team is the closest to us, and that's just coming out of Rainy Pass. And they just took it with the lighting was perfect. People say, how do you not get lost out on Iditarod? Well, there's a couple different ways. They put orange tape in the trees that you see. They also take wooden lath and put it out on the trail. It's painted orange on top so you can see it in the daylight. It's got reflective tape underneath for nighttime. That's actually Roan checkpoint. When you get into a checkpoint, first thing you're going to do is lay down the straw. Then the dogs are going to curl up and they're going to take a nap. And usually at that point, you start melting enough snow to get enough water to feed 16 dogs. The problem with Iditarod, or not really a problem, but you have no water out there, so you're definitely going to have to melt the snow to get enough water for the Iditarod. So there's our cooker at the base of that tree. Put the snow in the silver pot, put the fire in the black portion, and melt it down. And in 20 minutes, you usually have enough water to feed your 16 dogs. Go find your drop bags, restock your sled, take your booties off your dogs, unhook part of their tug line so they can stretch around a little bit better, salve their feet, massage them, melt more snow. You don't get much sleep out there. Susan used to say that you get about 2 hours of sleep for every 24-hour period because you're the caretaker. Even though the vets are coming over and taking care of them, if you take care of your dog team, they'll take care of you. Blake Matray, he and I ran the last couple legs of the race together. He was an airline pilot, and I was an airline pilot and a helicopter pilot, so we wound up traveling together on the last part of the race. What's wrong with that picture? No snow, huh? So there wasn't any snow, and there wasn't any snow for a good 20 miles or so. Well, if there's no snow, there's not very good brakes, let me tell you. And you also use plastic on the bottom part of your runners. That plastic goes bad. You have to flip over your sled and put new plastic on. And still, as far as I can see, there's no snow. My team's the one ahead. This is Rob Loveman's team here. That circle on the back of my sled is yellow plastic that actually we can replace the plastic that's on the sled so we don't ruin the runners. Still, no snow. Finally, snow. And we took a break there, and a snowmobiler came by and said, "What are you guys doing?" We said, "Oh, we're looking for Nikolai." They said it's only about 2 miles up the trail, and we were spending the night out there at 30 below zero. If a dog gets tired or injured, you leave them at one of the checkpoints. The Iditarod Air Force flies them back to Anchorage where they'll take care of them back there. If you don't have a handler, if you have nobody that can take care of that dog when they fly back to Anchorage, the dog goes to the women's prison in Wasilla and they take care of them, the prisoners do. And they do an awesome job, they really do. Then when you get back to Anchorage, you'll get all your dogs back and then you're good again. That's like the little airplanes in the upper left-hand corner. They'll put skis on them and then land at the different checkpoints to take the dogs out. This is the Ophir checkpoint. It's 30 below zero in that picture. Dogs have jackets on that you see. Lay down the straw, let them have their rest, and then we'll be on our way again. That's halfway through the race. Ophir coach, if a dog gets tired or injured, he goes into the Ophir coach box, gets pulled by a snowmobile to where the nearest airplane can land. They couldn't land right there at that checkpoint, so they just move them out to where the airplane can land. Then the airplane will take them back to Anchorage. So we're in a library. Has anybody ever heard of Cotton's Tale by any chance? It's a children's book that was written about me. And if you know anything about Iditarod, 2009 was a tough year. They had an awful lot of snow, and it snowed and snowed and snowed, but that's what Alaska's all about, and that's what we're there to do, is run that race. So Blake Mattray and myself left the Iditarod checkpoint going to Shagluk, which was 65 miles, and we left and we're running together, and it started to snow. And who cares? It's snowing. And it got worse, and it got worse, and the dogs are starting to hop through the snow. And we had talked about that we run my schedule's 6 on and 6 off, so that 6 was coming up. So we wanted to stop and rest the dogs. So we stopped in 6 hours, and it just kept snowing. We made snow caves for the dogs, and we dug down into the snow and made these little caves for them, put jackets on them, put a blanket over top of them so they keep nice and warm, gave them something to eat, took care of them. We decided we were going to take a little break and then come back out and go on again. And so it just kept snowing and snowing, and they were getting pretty much buried. And 2 hours later, I called, and I'd say Drifter, and he'd stand up and shake off and say, "What's up, Mom?" And we talked about 54 feet and that it's a tractor trailer's length. When I called Cotton up, she couldn't stand up. And when I finally got up to Cotton, her eyes were rolled in the back of her head. And it was the weirdest look that you'd ever see because you couldn't see their pupils. The only thing you'd see is the whites of their eyes. And she was hypothermic. And for some reason, and I don't know why she did it, she came out of her snow cave and she laid on top of her sister, which she was running next to. And where's the wind at that point? It's on her. And at the time, it was 40 below zero, and the winds were blowing about 40 miles an hour. So we figured it was a good 60 below zero or so. And Blake and I were together. And we took Cotton, and we tried to warm her up, and she wouldn't warm up. So I took off as many clothes as I could, and I laid on top of her, and I figured my body heat against her body heat would warm her up. And she still didn't warm up. So Blake said to me, "What are we gonna do?" And I said, "Well, I got a Garmin Spot." And he said, "What's a Garmin Spot?" And I said, "It's a satellite tracker, and it's got a help button on it. It looks like that. And it's got 3 buttons on it. It's got an I'm okay button. It's got a help button, and it's got a 911 button. And you set it to a pre-programmed number. That pre-programmed number was my mother's number. And I'm an only child. So I set it up to her, and I said, if we hit that help button, it's going to send a message that says, send help ASAP, and it's going to bing our coordinates. And he said, well, we should do that. Go ahead and do that. And I said, time out. I said, we're going to both get disqualified from the race. And I said, we both have a lot of money in this. I said, let's take your dog team and move it up. And let's move it like 50 feet away from my dog team. And you say that you didn't know anything about it, that it was just all me because it's my dog. And he was a military man. And he said, we started this together. We'll finish this together. And he stayed with me. And I hit the help button. And it went to my mother's phone at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it said, send help ASAP, and bing my coordinates. She took it to Iditarod, and Iditarod said, there's a blizzard out there. Everybody's stuck. Kim's just probably freaking out. We can't get to her anyway. So there's no way to get a response on that. So I hit the button again at 3 o'clock because I don't know if she got the response because nobody came. And I hit it again at 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, and then nobody came. And just remember, I'm an only child, so my mother getting all these messages, and she did get every one, was freaking out, to say the least. So a guy comes out from Native American from Shaglock, and he comes out, and he said, we noticed that you weren't moving on your GPS. How do you know that? Because that GPS is on the front of our sled. And we can't use it, but it's for you fans to be able to track everybody. And he was a fan, and he said, we noticed that you weren't moving. What's going on? Got a dog in trouble. I'm still laying on cotton in the sleeping bag. And he said, Lou Packer, he's an MD, and he was running Iditarod. He was right ahead of us by about 5 miles. He had some dogs in trouble, and he had himself that was getting frostbite real bad. And they said, if you can get your dog up to the airplane just got in there to save Lou, we can put your dog on that airplane and get her veterinary assistance, but you'll be disqualified from the race. And I said, that's okay. Dog's more important. That's fine. So I sat with the sleeping bag with her in a toboggan, and that snowmobiler pulled me up to the airplane. And I put her in the airplane. The airplane was running, getting ready to take off, because they didn't know we were coming. And I put her in the sleeping bag in the airplane, and Lou Packer looked at me and said, take your sleeping bag. And I said, no, Cotton needs it more than me. And he handed me his sleeping bag and said, don't die on me, because I had to go back to the dogs and stay out with them, and then they would come back and pick us up the next day. So they flew her off with Lou Packer's dogs and himself, and they took her to Lake, and I didn't know if she lived or died. They flew in to get Blake and myself the next day, and I said, did my dogs make it, or my dog make it? And he said, I don't know. And so I still didn't know. We loaded up the dogs, and the airplane pilot helped me put the dogs on and said, my gosh, they're strong. You could make it all the way to Nome with these guys, and they were. They still wanted to go. So we got them in the airplane. We flew to Lake, and I went into a makeshift vet's office, and it was in the hangar. And Cotton was laying on a freezer chest, and when she saw me, her tail went thump, 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 thump. When she got there, her temperature was below 85 degrees. Any idea what a dog's temperature should be? Yeah, 101.3, whoever said that, yeah, 101.3. They gave her warm IVs. They put her in a furnace room. They had somebody laying with her. And she came back and lived until she was 16 here in Michigan with me. So what I try to teach everybody is it's not, if you want to win, it's not winning or losing. It's how you play the game. I could have been the first New Jersey team to finish Iditarod, and she would have passed away. And they told me that I would have finished the race because there was nothing that they could have done because the weather was so bad. Or I could have used that Garmin spot, which I was not supposed to have, by the way. We were not allowed to carry those. Today's rules, they want you to carry them. You have to carry them. That was the first year, and I had it tucked away in my jacket and used it. And they always make rules for other people or from experiences, and now they carry them today. So Cotton lived till she was 16. That was our campsite. Blake was nice enough to have a tent, so we sat in the tent there after Cotton flew away. The snowmobiler gave us a bag of M&Ms, which I thought was really appropriate since M&M was a New Jersey chocolate. So got to eat M&Ms. We built that fire. It was about 60 below zero, and it wound up, you wouldn't want to fall in it. You'd never get back out. That was the flight back to Lake. That's our dog team, or my dog team, on the fence line there waiting for their flight out. And that's how they did it. They would put them in a crate, and they would bring over a forklift, pick up the crate underneath the pallet, and then load them in the airplane, and then fly them back to Anchorage. And then you would take a different flight. That was a dogs-only flight. That was not people. And then we would go back in a smaller airplane, like a caravan. So Guys, it's not about winning or losing. It's how you play the game. You know, you follow your heart and you follow your dreams. But a lot of the parents out there are really about winning, and baseball, softball, it doesn't matter what sport you're in. It's really how you play. This is Liard Hot Springs. It was a good 105 degrees there in that water. I think you're supposed to spend like 5 or 10 minutes in there. I think I spent a good half an hour in there thawing. It was really pretty nice. It's in Canada, and that was on the drive back home. If you remember the Samoyeds that were chasing the squirrels in the very beginning and how I got my start, this is him, and he lived until he was 17. That's him on the couch at home saying, I'm glad I wasn't out there. This is just perfect for me. Usually Jean's here as my handler, but this was a little too far away to bring her. This is her slide. Team spells together, everyone achieves more. And as a team, we went out there and did our best, and we're proud of how we did it. And hopefully we'll get back and run Iditarod again. This is what we do right now to earn money to get back to Iditarod. We give dog sled rides up in the UP. We have a double driver sled, and I'll drive in the middle, and you guys will drive in the back, and I'll just teach you how to drive, and then you can't hurt my dogs that way. But what I love about this picture is this is my seniors, and if you look at those faces, see how happy they are? This was just taken last year. That black and white leader on the right-hand side is 13 years old, and the white one was 12 years old. So they're super happy to be out there doing this. That's a Cotton's Tail book that we talked about that is written about my Iditarod experience. And hopefully I left you enough time for some questions.
This program was recorded on June 24th, 2019 at the Ann Arbor District Library.